Coming up today, meeting the leaders of the US, China and Japan in Washington on the sidelines of the Nuclear Security Summit. President Park Geun-hye warns North Korea against staging another provocation. South Korea's political parties are pounding the streets again on day 2 of the official campaigning period for the April 13th general election. The three main parties are getting creative in their efforts to woo voters. South Korea's exports continue to fall in March, but the rate of decline slowed sharply from the previous month. Tumbling imports mean Korea posts a trade surplus for the 50th month in a row. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Friday, the 1st of April. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. We are going to kick things off with our ongoing comprehensive coverage of President Park Geun-hye's trip to Washington and the Nuclear Security Summit taking place in the US Capitol. So, the Nuclear Security Summit is our starting point this afternoon. It's the last of 4 summits initiated by US President Barack Obama aimed at making a safer world with increased nuclear security. South Korea, which hosted the second summit 4 years ago, has been busy securing even greater support for its push to rein in North Korea's nuclear ambitions. Our presidential office correspondent Song Ji-sun reports from Washington.
A stronger message for North Korea and a warning not to push ahead with more nuclear aggression that threatens peace and stability, not only in the region, but the entire world. South Korea, the US, and Japan agreed to intensify their trilateral security cooperation against North Korea's rising threats of further provocations.
저는 미일 두 정상과 함께 국제사회가 북한의 도발을 결코 좌시하지 않을 것이며 만약 북한이 또다시 도발을 감행한다면 북한은 더욱 강력한 제재와 고립에 직면할 수밖에 없을 것임을 다시 한번 경고합니다.
During her separate one-on-one sessions with U.S. President Barack Obama, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, and Chinese President Xi Jinping, President Park once again stressed the need for the effective implementation of sanctions on North Korea, both on international and independent levels. After those talks, the Nuclear Security Summit officially began with a reception and working dinner at the White House on Thursday evening, where President Park reiterated her wish for a nuclear-free Korean peninsula, adding that the world without nuclear weapons should start from there. At this last Nuclear Security Summit, President Park Geun-hye will stress the danger posed by North Korea's nuclear threat and seek a united international effort to pressure Pyongyang to denuclearize. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News, Washington.
Now, within the past few minutes, South Korea's presidential office of Cheong Wa-dae has announced that Chinese President Xi Jinping told President Park that Beijing will fully implement the UN Security Council resolutions against North Korea. Now, as we just heard in Ji-sun's report, the leaders of South Korea, the US and Japan also held a trilateral summit. The focus was mainly on enhancing three-way cooperation in the face of rising nuclear provocations from North Korea. Our Kim Ji-yeon takes a deeper look.
During her meeting with her U.S. and Japanese counterparts at the Nuclear Security Summit held in Washington on Thursday, South Korean President Park Geun-hye reiterated her stance to firmly stamp down on the rising nuclear provocations from North Korea.
저는 전례 없이 강력한 안보리 대북 제재 결의 2270호가 채택된 만큼 이제 중요한 것은 결의를 철저히 이행해 나감으로써 북한이 핵포기 없이는 생존할 수 없음을 깨닫게 하는 것이라고 봅니다. 한미일 3국은 이를 위해 안보리 결의 이행뿐만 아니라 각국의 독자 대북 제재 조치 시행을 서로 긴밀하게 조율해 가면서 국제사회가 실효적으로 대북 압박을 강화하도록 국제사회와의 연대도 더 한층 강화해 나가기로 하였습니다.
U.S. President Barack Obama said the trilateral ties between Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo are united in countering North Korea's nuclear and missile provocations, adding that the three countries have agreed to deepen their cooperation.
We've directed our teams to work diligently in the coming weeks and months to elaborate additional steps that we can take collectively in order to ensure that we have a denuclearized Korean Peninsula and that we can restore a sense of stability and peace to the region, as well as hopefully promoting the kind of opportunities and prosperity for the North Korean people who have been suffering so severely because of human rights abuses in North Korea.
Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe also acknowledged the importance of the trilateral alliance against rising North Korean provocations, which he called a threat to international peace and security.
In light of the regional situation faced by the three nations, it is necessary to further promote South Korea-U.S. Japan cooperation in the area of security. Our special concern is the progress of North Korea's nuclear and missile capability, which is a direct and great threat not only to the three countries, but to the global community. In order to jointly respond to such circumstances, we confirm our commitment to strengthen the trilateral cooperation at all levels, which was a major achievement for this meeting.
This is the first time in 2 years that the three leaders hold trilateral talks. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
So, as we've been hearing, and as was expected, North Korea was the major topic of discussion during those string of sideline summits at the Nuclear Security Summit in Washington. But will this be enough to send an effective message to the North Korean regime? Kwon Swa spoke to some experts to find out.
With bilateral talks between South Korea and China and the U.S. and China both lasting much longer than anticipated, the importance of Beijing's role is being emphasized in regards to dealing with Pyongyang's nuclear and missile threats.
It's been roughly a month now since the UN Security Council resolution has passed, and implementation by China is seen as a pivotal point. That's why the South Korean and U.S. leaders have most likely urged President Xi to make active and long-term efforts.
Experts say the urgency of the matter requires more cooperation than just following through with sanctions, especially with the threat of a fifth nuclear test by North Korea looming.
It's still not the amount of pressure that we can bring to bear on the North Korean regime is still not quite comparable to the level that we've seen in cases like Iran or Syria. So if there are ways to further tighten existing sanctions or impose additional measures to change the North Korean calculus on its nuclear program, then I think that's a positive development.
And an example of that, Dr. Kim says, would be tying in the issue of North Korean human rights raised at the trilateral meeting between Seoul, Washington, and Tokyo. He added increasing the level of readiness and military cooperation, as well as sharing of information, would be a good idea too. But tight trilateral partnership may not be so appealing to China.
What's interesting about the latest development is that Japan and Korea is now starting to cooperate under the U.S. umbrella. And that also sends a really troubling message for China. China needs to get moving on this front, otherwise it may get left out of this, about how problems might get resolved on the Korean Peninsula. And that's not in China's best interest either.
Closer cooperation between Seoul and Tokyo can be partly attributed to the landmark deal on Japan's sexual enslavement of South Korean women before and during World War II. President Park Geun-hye and her Japanese counterpart Shinzo Abe's brief reaffirmation at the summit may not have been enough, though.
There is still protest within Korea from citizens and the surviving victims. Although working-level talks on the follow-up measures of the Seoul-Tokyo deal are in progress, it seems like the two countries are not ready.
It's also seen difficult to raise the issue at this time with South Korea in the midst of preparations for April elections. Kwon Swa, Arirang News.
Now, U.S. President Barack Obama says he and Chinese leader Xi Jinping are both committed to the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. Emerging from their meeting in Washington, the leaders issued a joint statement saying they would work together closely. Park Jong-hong with the details.
The U.S. and China adopted a joint statement vowing robust collaboration. Presidents Obama and Xi agreed to continue to improve nuclear security, quote, for the common benefit and security of all. But the statement stopped short of singling out the threat posed by North Korea. The regime in Pyongyang has been launching provocations in recent months with a spate of missile firings and nuclear activities. Addressing the media before the one-on-one meeting, President Obama reaffirmed that he and President Xi are on the same page on the issue of denuclearization and the implementation of sanctions against Pyongyang.
President Xi and I are both committed to the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and full implementation of UN sanctions. So we're going to discuss how we can discourage action like nuclear and missile tests that escalate tensions and violate international obligations.
Boosting bilateral cooperation, President Obama said the two countries will try to narrow any differences on North Korea's pursuit of nuclear weapons. In response, President Xi said even though there are some disputes and disagreements on some areas, he will seek active solutions through dialogue and consultation with the U.S., respecting the mutual core interests and major concerns of the respective countries.
We've had effective communication and coordination on the Korean nuclear issue, Syria, Afghanistan, and peacekeeping development, health, and other important issues.
Washington and Beijing have been at odds for years over human rights and China's construction of artificial islands and military facilities on the disputed South China Sea. Japan and South Korea are also concerned about China's territorial maneuvers in the East China Sea. The White House announced the U.S. and China will be among the nations signing the landmark Paris Climate Change Agreement in New York. Both countries agreed to take part in the signing ceremony on April 22nd. Park Jong-hong, Arirang News.
Now we are well into the second official day of campaigning for the April 13th general election, and the three main political parties are continuing to hit the streets across Korea. Leaders of the ruling Saenuri Party are taking aim at southern Gyeonggi-do province this Friday, targeting populous cities south of Seoul such as Suwon and Ansan. With the Conservative Party's support base in these regions believed to be shrinking, party leader Kim Moo-sung and floor leader Won Yu-chol will spend the day drumming up local support. The main opposition Minju Party kicked off a two-night, three-day campaign in the nation's western Jeolla province and on Jeju Island on this Friday. The regions are the party's traditional strongholds, but due to the creation of the minor opposition People's Party, votes in the region are expected to be split among Liberal candidates. The People's Party will also spend the day in Gyeonggi-do province and in some districts in Seoul on Friday. The party's co-leader, An Chol-soo, that man there, told reporters this morning that the party has not shut the door on a possible coalition among opposition candidates, though it is unlikely at this point. So we're on day two of the official campaigning period for the April 13th general election, and Korea's main political parties have been coming up with some novel ways to drum up support and spread their message. Lee Ji-won has the details.
From a touch of self-mockery to a catchy theme song, Korea's three main parties have come up with creative ways to squeeze every last vote out of the public. The ruling Saenuri Party has released a promotional video that pokes fun at itself for the internal struggle the party went through during the candidate nomination process. By turning Kim Moo-sung's trip to Busan to refuse the nominations into a humorous self-mocking video, the party is trying to capture the attention of the young generation. The main opposition, the Minju Party, used the word "the" in its name, which means more in Korean, to promote what more it can do for the public. It further stressed upon and used the word "덜," which means less in Korean, to promise that it can lessen the burden by cutting university tuition and other fees. Last but not least, the minor opposition People's Party has used a popular Korean cartoon theme song to portray itself. Experts say the party hopes the song will make voters see it as the powerful, just, and righteous hero of the cartoon. And as the song is widely known to the public, people can easily follow along with the lyrics. With the political campaigns just heating up, it should be interesting to see how creative the campaigns can get. 이지원, Arirang News.
Now, while leaders gather in Washington to discuss nuclear issues at the Nuclear Security Summit, a new report out of the US claims North Korea has developed a new ballistic missile that can strike targets in the United States. It quotes one official as saying that the new missile is like Pyongyang's current ICBM on steroids. Connie Kim with the details.
North Korea revealed its new intercontinental ballistic missile at a military parade marking the 70th anniversary of its Workers' Party in October. The Washington Free Beacon, a U.S.-based conservative military media outlet, said the missile is called the KN-14, an upgraded version of the road-mobile KN-08 intercontinental ballistic missile that's shorter in length with a blunt nose cone. Although the new KN-14 has not been flight tested, the ICBM is estimated to have a range of 8,000 to 9,900 kilometers. The KN-08, capable of reaching the U.S. continent, has been considered a key threat to the U.S., and its mobile feature makes launches harder to detect. The confirmation of the new North Korean ICBM increases the potential of nuclear threats from Pyongyang. North Korea continued to boast its missile capabilities following the announcement of UN sanctions this month for its nuclear and long-range ballistic missile tests. The North also claims to have successfully miniaturized a nuclear warhead, acquired atmospheric re-entry technology, and successfully tested a solid-fuel rocket engine. Recent progress in North Korea's possible nuclear programs underlines the importance for the international community to reaffirm their commitment to denuclearize Pyongyang at the nuclear summit in Washington. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
South Korea's exports have been on a downward spiral for the longest period on record now. In a sliver of light in an otherwise dark tunnel, the pace of decline in March slowed significantly. But the government says it's too early to say whether the economy is on a full recovery track. Kim Min-ji has the details.
Korea's exports took another dive last month. According to the Trade Ministry, exports fell over 8% in March from the same month last year to $43 billion. It marks the 15th straight month of decline and the longest downward streak ever, breaking the previous record of 13 months from March 2001. But what's noteworthy is that the pace of decline slowed. Since December last year, outbound shipments posted double-digit drops, and January saw the biggest on-year decline in nearly 6 years.
Exports shrank by a single-digit figure in March thanks to an uptick in exports of steel products and mobile communication devices. Shipments of semiconductors fell, but the rate of drop significantly slowed thanks to a demand for new smartphones.
However, exports of petroleum products and petrochemicals drove the overall decline, while falling export prices also pulled the figure down. Imports, on the other hand, fell almost 14% to $33.2 billion, also falling for the 15th straight month. With that, the trade surplus came to $9.8 billion, extending the surplus streak to 50 straight months. Like previous months, what's worrisome is that the surpluses have mainly been driven by a sharp decrease in imports, rather than an increase in exports. The ministry said although exports improved a touch last month, it's too early to say that they are on the recovery track, given the uncertainties at home and abroad. Ministry officials have vowed to closely monitor the situation. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now staying with economic news, and Korea's consumer prices gained at least 1% for the second straight month in March. According to a report by Statistics Korea, the country's consumer price index rose 1% last month from a year earlier. That's slightly lower than February's 1.3%. The agency said the rise was driven by prices of agricultural products, which jumped over 5% on year. due to a supply shortage of staple farm products like onions and garlic. Prices of fresh food, including vegetables and fruit, jumped 9.7% over the same period. Core inflation, which excludes volatile oil and food prices, rose 1.9% on year, down 0.1 percentage point from a year ago. The number of mobile subscribers in Korea is set to break the 60 million mark by the end of 2016, and that will far exceed the country's population. According to the Ministry of Science, ICT and Future Planning, the number of subscribers to mobile network services, including those for wearable devices, reached 59 million at the end of February. The figure indicates that an increasing number of people have more than one mobile account, as Korea's population currently stands at around 51.5 million. The number of mobile subscribers rose nearly 190,000 in February alone, with over 70,000 wearable and Internet of Things users. Hundreds of rescue workers have been working through the night in the eastern Indian city of Kolkata to locate and try and save up to 150 people who are feared trapped under a collapsed flyover. More than 20 people have been confirmed dead and more than 90 injured, many seriously. Rescue operations have been hampered as buildings on either side of the street and heavy traffic restricted access, initially at least, for heavy lifting gear and ambulances. Now, the section of the flyover spanned the entire width of the street and was designed to actually ease congestion through a very densely crowded neighborhood. Construction experts say that continual delays in the building project weakened the flyover. Large-scale construction projects in India have long been plagued by lax safety standards, and deadly disasters are fairly commonplace. Well, that's all we have for now on this Friday lunchtime here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom. Thank you as always for watching. We'll be back throughout the day with more newscasts, but if we don't see you, have a great weekend. Until next time, goodbye.